So part of the deconstruction work that I have been doing, find me on YouTube, since we're no longer, we may or may not have TikTok, but find me on YouTube, TikTok, and also Meta products like Facebook. I prefer you to find me on YouTube because I think that's really going to be the most enduring place that most of us congregate. But for deconstruction purposes, for many years now, I have been talking about a rereading of the Bible and doing it in a less toxic manner. We've all deconstructed out of that literal, that very much so. God is, or the words of the Bible are the inerrant words of God, actually penned by a man hearing from God, and we understand from the truth of what is there, and the truth of what we can glean from history is that it's just what a series of men said or described as what they interpreted to be their interaction with what they are calling God. And so for a lot of Christians, they suffer a high degree of cognitive dissonance when dealing with that, because most of them were actually inculcated into cultists. And so part of the work that has to be done in order for Christianity to ascend into a healthier version is what we have all been deconstructing out of, which is this biblical literalism that is mired in whatever form or ism of Christianity that we were taught. And so doing that sets you up for more success when you're trying to find your way out of whatever mess you were inculcated with. Children should not be inculcated with any given religion. Children can be taught about the many religions that exist, and a part of them being taught about those religions is teaching the child critical thinking, because that's the problem. That's where former generations have erred. And I have watched for decades, and I'll just talk about the people that I know. I've watched for decades as people don't even realize they're cultists. People don't realize that what they're worshiping is really a combination of themselves and whoever they've decided that God is. And that in and of itself is incredibly dangerous, because Christianity, I've taught this for many years, has some fatal flaws. So fatal that it's hard to find non-toxic versions of it. The Christian is constantly having to deconstruct out of the nonsense that they have held as true. And if they refuse to do that, then they are a cultist worshiping themselves, because Christians have decided who and what God is, and depending on what version of the cult of current Christianity that you're inculcated with, and really can become, because you may have been on the right path at one time, and that just depends on whether or not you actually accept Christianity is true, because Christianity is, anyway, you guys know how I think about that. But depending on the type of Christianity that you were inculcated with, you cannot deconstruct out of it if you don't have a mind that thinks critically. So you need to be able to evaluate. You have to evaluate what you believe and why you believe it. And critical thinking is important for every part of your life. If you are not critically thinking, if you are not willing to reimagine, if you're not willing to take a critical eye to what you believe, you can end up mired in whatever form of toxic thinking and behaviors, and you'll never come out of it. That's why I don't bother with people who are, say for instance, they're Christian nationalists. I'll ask them a series of questions, and after that I know they're not coming out of it. They like their cult. They like the cult. They like that they are in control. And what they don't understand is that whatever God or version of God that they've created, I told you about the God box. So for some people, it's just the God book. They literally write down their thoughts and beliefs, and that book is within themselves. It's in their mind. And they've decided that this is who God is because their granddaddy's granddaddy, I don't know, so many thousands of years of their version of whatever, and that's what they worship. And so you get these people who cannot come out of what they believe. And so it's so damaging not to teach your children critical thinking from a very young age. And that stuff is a process. I'm in the process of it. But if you don't teach yourself, because to be Black in America, you better have a certain amount of critical thinking and sobriety of mind, or your Blackness could end up getting you unalived. That's just, I was talking critical thinking because my parents were like, I was taught critical thinking, all while being inculcated into a certain version of Christianity. All while being inculcated into it. All while being taught Christian Zionism. All while being taught Christian nationalism. Which some of the people I know cannot come out of that stuff until this day. So you just leave it alone. Because part of what I'm going to be teaching in 2025 is that, like, not all Christianity is going to lead you to this eternity that you think you're going to get. And that's the hard lesson that some of them are going to have to accept. Because, okay, so let's just accept you're right. Let's accept that there is a heaven and that there is a hell, and that we will ignore the history of what we understand about hell and Satan and the whole figure and how all that stuff developed, and we'll just suspend that. Now let's look at your idolatry, because most people, that's the fatal flaw of Christianity. The Christianity comes from the human being. Because Christ wasn't on this earth creating Christianity. The Christianity came from the people, and they developed a belief system around this person, and what they believed about them and what they wanted others to believe about them. And so if you're dealing with a person who they're not going to be able to come out of that, then now okay, that's fine. Here's the next one. Now we all need to start talking about, okay, well, your idolatry, let's say you're completely correct. Your idolatry is what's going to keep you from the heaven, from the eternity that you think you're going to. And I think that is going to be a healthy exercise, and a lot of people actually take part in that. But I think that's going to be a healthy exercise for people in 2025, and even coming out of 2024, because to a certain extent, people who've deconstructed out of whatever form of Christianity they were in, they have already gone through this process, because what they come to understand is that there are people who are going to go through their whole lives as what they think is supposed to be a Christian. Let's just pretend for a second that Christ came, and his work in the earth was about setting up Christianity and the foundation of Christianity. Okay. I mean, the Bible teaches us about Christ deconstructing out of the theology of his day, speaking truth to power. But okay, so let's just make this cultic leap into that. Now, what is the right version of Christianity? And how do you know that you are in the right version of Christianity? Because what are we at, 40,000 isms now? I mean, they crop up every day. I don't think Christians understand, but every day you're sui generating. You're generating within and of yourself your version of Christianity. There are people like the people in the gun cult. Was it the Kims? I think I'm getting the wrong. No, not the Shin. The Kims. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. Probably getting that wrong. But the AK-47 Christian cult, they believe their version of Christianity is not a form of idolatry, and they believe that that the Spirit of God is leading them, and that what they're doing is correct. So I think that's where we go in 2025. It's where I'll be going, and I'll be doing snippet after snippet after snippet, because I think people like their deconstruction in a shorter version, short snippets. But I think people need to think about that, because I think people are missing. They think that because they're Christian, that their God doesn't allow them to be deceived, when the Bible and the world for generations have been filled with deceiving people. There are people who are in the snake cult. That's their version of Christianity. The gun cult, that's their version of Christianity. Versions of Christianity that allow for the abuse of children. Look at the Duggars. They think they're Christians. Yeah. So I think one of the hard questions that people need to ask while thinking critically is that, is your Christianity actually Christianity, or is that mess that you believe in, like nationalism? I had to tell a family member, and they're proud. They're proud nationalists. They're very proud. The problem is that their life hasn't required that they're reevaluate what they believe, because what they believe is toxic as to others, but not to them. And so that's incredibly dangerous, and that's really what you're going to be seeing. You're really about to see a lot of that in 2025. Let me roll back up my video. You're about to see in 2025 an aggressive push to create a nationalist America. And you're going to see an aggressive push, idolatry all up in your face. Like all up in your face. It's been there. There was the attempt and the move to get people to deconstruct, and a lot of healthy deconstruction going. The people are leaving the church. They're about to leave that mess in droves. And people in these evangelical, I call them fish barrels, where you got so many people packing them in on a Sunday. It's like when the shooting starts, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. But that's when the pew-pewing starts. It's like, pew-pewing. It's endless amount of carnage that you can create in those places. But that's I've talked about how that's coming for them, because, and also the aggressive push to make them stop is also coming, and how that manifests, unfortunately, is with the loss of innocent lives. It's not because I'm going to be doing that, but because as I give you guys, I work on the probabilities, the projections, and then I give you the forecast. I just give it to you. I tell you, here's what's coming. It's just part of what I can do. And as you've seen on my page, I ain't off. I'm not perfect, but I'm not off. And so Christians are really going to come into a reckoning. People are tired of it. They're going to come into a reckoning, both personally, professionally, and all of that, which they never actually had to deal with. So I'll end it here, because we need to start in 2025. I say evaluating what I was just talking about. And I think we need to help, because it's another form of deconstruction, de-incultation, right? To pull people out of these cultic, because Christians don't even realize that most of them are just, they're in a cult. They're not in Christianity, not really in any form. It's just Christian related or Christian adjacent. And so what they consistently do year over year, instead of worshiping the creation of a better character and a perfected character, they worship a cause. They worship custom. They worship culture wars. And that's really what's going on. It has nothing to do with it's like there are certain versions of all religions that are just masquerading as what could be a more pure form, and that's what's going on. So your nationalism is going to come into play. Most of your Christian nationalists are like evangelicals or Christian nationalists. And the war begins to intensify, not just because President Elon Musk is coming into power, an oligarchy, open, uncontrolled, unabated, and consistently is coming into power. It's literally because Christians, people who are calling themselves Christians, who are just nationalists, they're cultists, they think they're right. You see, when you have a group of individuals who, and that's the problem, a man does what he thinks is right. And I think using their Bible to assist with teaching that is going to be healthy for them. So if you guys want other content on that, a man does what he thinks is right. A man does what seems right. And what they think is that Trump is what God wants, instead of what their God wants is to disabuse them of their nationalism, of their idolatry, of their greed, and of their xenophobia. And if they understood the interplay between entities who have impacted mankind in Christianity, that there is a unified push to change and ameliorate their character. And so that to the extent that they will force humans into the position of suffering such bondage from the things that they think are right, that those humans rebel against what they thought was right, and they change. And until you understand the interplay between mankind, and there's a series of entities that's at work. But I'm hoping by 2027 people will have more of a real life understanding of what that is, because Christians don't own those entities. No matter how much witchcraft they pretend, and they call it Christianity, no matter how much witchcraft that they've been utilizing to try to compel the extra dimensional and then entities that are here, they're just beings, just species, right? And so human beings are now waking up to the fact that there are other species of things that are here, and those species have been interacting with mankind, and mankind, to a large extent, sees everything as spiritual. It's the craziest thing. Anything that's most, it's like when you're dealing with your average Christian, your average evangelical. If it's bad, it's a demon. Which is such an ignorant and really largely almost irrelevant term, because it doesn't even deal with it. Just anything negative, it's got to be the devil. Anything negative. Well, they're about to experience some truly horrific things now that they've decided to enslave themselves to oligarchy to a larger extent than which has been that they've been enslaved to, and they see outright corruption in their faces, in which these people start pouring out the coffers of their country, and they begin to suffer their roadways, etc., 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 etc. And then they're going to start calling the fact that they don't have any more Obamacare, and that's gone, your Social Security and social safety nets are axed. And I'm not saying that's a definite, but it's a threat, and it's been threatened for so long. You don't play around with it now that they have what they have. So all we can hope, the best that we can hope for really is confusion, and that they are so chaotic that they can't really achieve what they're trying to achieve. And that the chaos that we've seen so far continues. Because once those social safety nets are gone, those people who call themselves Christians say that they can call upon their God to help them. It's going to get real interesting to see who's a Christian, an actual adherent of that entity that they're talking about, in series of entities. that have operated in that circle. Oh, it's gonna get real interesting, because they just voted to take away social safety nets. They just voted to hurt themselves, and they voted for all of that. And because in the West, you've had social safety nets, people have had and I've talked about this before. In the West, in America, you have social safety nets, so you have something. For some, they've hit all the way to the bottom and they don't have anything. But for many people, there's some form of social safety net that saved them. Well, what's going to happen when you get rid of that? Because I've often argued on my channel that, and you'll have to forgive me for the position of my camera, but I've often argued on my channel, Christianity always appears to benefit empire, those who are able to steal, kill, and destroy, to do all manner of evil, and then those who rewrite that history to get rid of the evils that they did, so that they didn't look like Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue, who and now he's demonized as he should be. But what I'm saying is that Christianity is really, it's seen as it at its strongest, and there's an opposite and equal argument. I know that, but it really is seen at its strongest and most formidable when it is benefiting empire, because people then in those empires, like in America, people in America say that they're a Christian nation, and then they are able to walk around in the wealth of Western society, which is now going to be torn out. That's going to be. So now you are going to be dealing with a people who are not made rich by God, but you will see people who are calling upon their deity to deliver them from the pit that they dug and then jumped into. That is what you will see. So you need to sit back and you need to watch and you need to see this, because Christians need to see what they have been building, what they have been digging, and they have been digging a hole. And it's not every Christian, but like I said, hey, it's some of y'all, it's all of y'all, because Christendom calls itself the body of Christ, who takes what they claim to be the animus, the thoughts, the desires for humankind, and they act that out, being its hands and feet, and implement that. So that is why all of you or none of you. That's why people say that. It's all of you or none of you. But here we are. And so I want you guys to watch as over time, and it's already here. You see the truth of what Western Christianity is, and really what Western Christian idolatry is. And you will see these people screaming and crying for a God that doesn't answer. They made choices for themselves that will result in certain. It's like we saw with the fatalities during the first Trump administration, like we've seen with the fatalities that have existed for some time. And the rot of a human being. I don't know if you've seen the scary rot of a human being who they have claimed to be a Christian their whole lives. Really, they're actually a nationalist, and they worship culture wars. They're occultists, and they worship themselves, because the God that they've been worshiping, that what they don't realize is really the amalgamation of what they've chosen to believe about that God. And again, that is part of the folly of Christianity. But I'll end it here, just so that I can carve this up for you all. You all need to sit in the discomfort of what I've been saying. And I apologize if the audio isn't that great. We were sitting in a rainstorm, and so I wanted to start getting these thoughts out which in short, we need to start attacking the idolatry, because it is the idolatry, and many are, it is the idolatry that is going to result in what Christians fear and have been role-playing as the coming persecution of Christians. And it won't be because of their Christianity. It's coming because of their idolatry, and because the idolatry is killing people. It's unaliving them. It is ruining lives, and it is rotting generations. It is easier. And one of the things that I'll also be attacking is it is easier to... So I'm going to use some Christian logic for a second. Although the enemy really of Christianity is truly the Christian. It's always been, will always be the enemy of the Christian. But one of the things that they need to understand is that, and let's talk about it from the Christian perspective. So we'll use the character of the devil, which in truth they are. They are. Human beings have a capacity to be in this dualistic framework that we exist in, both good and evil, and variations in between. And what Christianity really at its most effective would be to help Christians to deconstruct out of the evil that's within themselves, and to reconstruct into a happier, healthier person. And the sad and hilarious part about it is you don't need Christianity to do that. Quite frankly, you could do it more effectively without it. There's too much confusion and delusion that goes on in the Christian faith, and really the Abrahamic religions in general, that it's not necessarily your best option, okay? For Christians, they're not going to understand that, because they see their versions of 40,000 isms as the only way to God. Okay, well, you got 40,000 paths to that God through your one branch of the three branches of the Abrahamic religions. Is anybody catching the craziness here? And if that is so, and your God can't really settle on getting you all in one accord, or can't really be bothered, I think. And people will say, why? We all have the freedom of... You don't have... There's no freedom of choice. Not when you believe that if you do not choose your way and your path to your God, there's no... And if you don't do that, you will be punished for all of eternity. I have always been, and forever will be, saddened by the fact that human beings have decided to glom onto that, and that there hasn't been a literal reformation of getting rid of that. Because to be human, and I've taught this for many years, to be human is to live it's a very damaged and confused existence, in that you're damaged from birth. You are inculcated, you are lied to by your church, by your holy people, by your politicians, by your parents. They lie to you. They tell you there's a Santa Claus. They tell you there's an Easter bunny. They tell you there is a because I've been honest. I have said, especially even now with my 6-year-old, I always told her, I said, we are all Santa Claus. You know, so that she will understand. But she's chosen to believe in Santa Claus. And in truth, Santa Claus exists because we exist. Same way, that's the same reason I teach you, from a certain perspective, God exists because we exist. Because that God is not walking around in human form or in a form that is appreciable by all and can be heard by all. That's why when people say God is all powerful and all loving and knowing, blah blah blah, I would tell you that's a myth. There are beings that are, especially if you're an intuitive, there are beings that are, you know how we are, there's a series that I'm going to put out about, I was looking at this video about a squirrel. I think we've all seen the video about the squirrel that people adopted, and many times these squirrels will be infested with parasites, and so the human comes along, and the human, because of their greater capacity than the squirrel, are able to rid the squirrel of parasites. And this is I was sitting this morning realizing how much of a great teaching tool this is, because there are beings and levels of unified consciousness, and if you're talking about the spirit, that's a good example. That being can, because of its expansive ability, it can come along and help to remove those parasites from your body. And if you've listened to me for very long, you can understand you have parasites. It's in your logic, it's in the way you think, it's in the way you see the world. And that being of superior capacity and ability has the ability to come and remove parasites from you, right? And so a lot of people, unfortunately, then begin to worship this being when it's as crazy as the squirrel that I was just talking about in that example. And I'll post some, show you the video and then talk about it in another entry. But it's as crazy as the squirrel worshiping the human that took the parasites out of his body, because literally the people will adopt the squirrels and they'll help them heal. I mean, many people do this, right? So it's as crazy as the squirrel worshiping. You can be thankful. You can love that entity that has helped you, but to worship that entity is odd. And it drew me back to when human beings, like in the Bible, I use that as a good example, because I help Christians to deconstruct. They were like, yo, don't fear me, do not fear, is one of the things you consistently see. And yo, don't worship. Yo, that's not what I'm here for. They're just helpful entities. Okay? So I think that applies here. Okay? That applies to what we're seeing in our environment when human beings, they worship things that are greater than themselves. They worship LeBron James. I mean, yeah, they worship Michael Jordan. They worship princesses, people who descended from murderers and serial unalivers. They worship them. You're a CEO that serially unalives those who have a healthcare plan through your company. They worship you because you were able to unalive at will, get away with it, and live a pretty posh life. So there's really a lot to be learned here. And so coming into 2025 and apparently now 2026, 2027, I really should start giving you guys my projections a bit more to help you all, because I told you to a certain extent I am here for people who they need somebody who thinks like that, who are able to come up with the probability of what's probably going to happen, what's the projected path based on history and based on what I'm sensing. And then there is the definite conclusion. I was telling you about those storms, and those storms are really a larger metaphor for what's going to happen in the U.S., the storms on the East Coast. And those storms are really a larger metaphor for what's going to happen. And the storms are brewing and they're coming your way. Well, we're still in the midst of that. Like, I would like to project for you all roses, but really, like I've said, been saying for a couple of weeks now, it's going to be some pretty horrific things, but also some pretty satisfying moments. So I think I might just call the series Guns and Roses. I really do. Not coming, touching the band, but that's what you're coming in for, is our Guns and Roses. You're getting something beautiful that you might want, and it smells good and is great, and then you're also going to get things that you do not want. And those things could, because there are some hard lefts and some hard traumatic rights that are coming. But I'm going to end it here because this will probably be a series called Guns N' Roses, and it's just me talking through things that I will actually go in and drill down into during this year for you all. And before I do that, I'm going to try, so excuse the video, excuse the angle, excuse all of that, but I really wanted to go ahead and start helping you all to begin to think differently. So there's a couple of things that you need to pay attention to that I'll be doing, is to help you, for those people who still love the Bible, still love Christianity, still they're trying to reconstruct back into it. You'll find some pretty interesting things that I want to talk about, and then there are the things that will be for those who just want to deconstruct out. There are some literary criticisms, some very interesting things that I think could be done when you're reading and looking at the Bible. I've already talked about reading the Bible as an allegory. So, but also reading the Bible to stop focusing, because in order to heal a person, to heal their spirit, they are going to have to know who they are. They need to know who they are outside of the programming that the government, that politicians, that your parents, that society, that everyone forces on you. And it's something that we're all talking like, you gotta de-inculcate. Because America within itself is a cult. Bad Boy is a cult. And American patriotism, because right now people are rotting from it. And they've made some really bad decisions based on the white supremacy, xenophobia, hatred that they, as Christians, non-Christians, and people of different varieties of religions, have decided that they're going to react out of. And that patriarchy and that misogyny and the rape culture that people refuse to come out of, it's been and it will continue to bite them in the backside. So that stuff will continue so find me on YouTube. Find me, you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram somewhat, but not so much, because Instagram is just, it's dead. It's a magazine, it's a dead magazine for old people who don't want to be culturally informed and only want reckless nonsense and stereotypes. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, find me on YouTube, like, share, and subscribe. Let's go ahead and put ourselves in a position to where you can get these videos as they come out, because you may not have time to listen to what has been quite some time.